All right, checking in on Cam Talbot and how his season went with the Ottawa Senators. We already know, confirmed by Pierre Doria, he will not be back. So with that said, we know that it's a one and done for Cam Talbot in the nation's capital. Pilsy, how would you summarize his stay?
Disappointing. I mean, I think that's what every Sens fan would agree to. I know we're gonna try not to mention this too many times, but when you look at the 1-for-1 trade and you look at how that went for Gustafsson in the Wild, I don't care. You can be like, "Oh, that doesn't matter. You just have to look at how he did in Ottawa." No, it is a factor when it's that big of a deal. If Gus went over there and had a decent season, or maybe still wasn't ready for a backup role or whatever, then who cares? But he went over there and he dominated. Like, he's in Vezina conversations. Will he win it? No, definitely not. But he was that good of a goalie that he basically willed the Minnesota Wild to a good spot in the playoffs. And Cam Talbot was supposed to be a stable veteran that kind of helped throw off the balance of all these goalie problems the Ottawa Senators have. He was supposed to be either a 1A or a 1B with Anton Forsberg. And unfortunately, a guy in his mid to late 30s. He started off with a rib injury. We didn't get to see him for quite a while. Forsberg and Sogard had to hold down the fort. Then he did come back. He played in a couple really good games. Like, there's a couple games where he did get the win for the Ottawa Senators, but Ross, unfortunately, in my mind, there are way more stinkers where he ends up getting pulled. And I mean, you were a witness of one of them in Winnipeg, and he just wasn't able to be consistent throughout. And then after that period, he gets hurt again, unfortunately. And then he comes back at the end of the season. The games actually matter at this point. Excuse me. And it's a point where you're like, okay, this is why we brought Cam Talbot in. Last season, he finished the year, what, Ross? Like 16-1-1 or something insane like that. So, hey, we got Talbot in here for a last season push. He's going to do the same, hopefully, for us. And that was not the case.
But he kind of did. I mean, he didn't stop the puck. He had an .877 save percentage in his last 11 games, but somehow, some way, he went 7-2-1 in those games. Like, I
True.
don't
Yeah.
understand. He was still able to get wins down the stretch, even though that save percentage was near, if not the bottom of the league over that stretch. He just really had trouble stringing together solid performances. The best he did was in December, where he had, I mean, a couple of them were maybe some handpicked opponents. There was that Wade Redden shutout game where Wade Redden was put in the Ring of Honor against Anaheim, had a 32 save shutout there, then got wins over Montreal and Detroit. He won 4 games in a row, and he played really well over that stretch. But then, yeah, the Winnipeg game was right after, 5 goals on 24 shots. And it really just felt like almost a bit of Matt Murray syndrome, where it was one great game, one bad game, one great game, one bad game, then get hurt. And then it was more like 2 or 3 really good games. You feel like you're getting on a roll, then clunk. Then it would be 1, 2, 3 games where you're like, what is going on? The one that stands out like a sore thumb, the New Year's game, right? New Year's Eve, where he lets it
Yep.
4 against Detroit, including where he put a pass right on the tape of the Detroit forechecker, and he scores what ended up being the game winner. Like, there were just some mistakes that I think Cam Talbot would tell you, and he did so much in his exit interview with the Sens, where it's like, man, that was brutal. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, this is not what my standard is as an NHL goalie. So Cam Talbot finishes with 36 games, 17 wins, a 293 goals against, an 898 save percentage. Now, goals saved above expected is an analytic we're going to use for the 3 goalies. That is based on the league average save percentage on any given day. Are you going to be higher or lower than that? And Cam Talbot was a minus 5.5 on the goals saved above expected. The fans were harsh on him too. We put up the poll on Twitter at Sens Central. The fans, 53.8%, the majority, put a D grade for Cam Talbot. And I only put A, B, C, D, 4 options. So we had some people even write in F. They had high hopes for him, right? He was the
Yep.
veteran. He was the stabilizer. And he did
hmm
not stabilize, unfortunately, in the crease for Ottawa this year.
Yeah, Ross, if I could give him a fan grade myself, I would give him a C minus, just because I do think as a goalie, especially an older goalie, when you get injuries, it throws off your balance and it's tough to make your way back into a routine and kind of get to where you want to be. But ultimately he wasn't able to be that guy. And I'm looking at his game logs, and it is interesting, like you mentioned. Like, sure, the numbers are terrible, but his record down the stretch was pretty good. Like, he had a 4-game win streak from February 27th, so that Detroit kind of back-to-back games, and then up against Philly on March 30th. Now, obviously, there's an injury in there for sure, but he goes 4-0 with a save percentage of 875 in that stretch. Like, he's getting a couple wins, but it's not like he's the reason they're winning these games. That was the Ottawa Senators offense that was really clicking off here. So it's so disappointing that he wasn't able to be the guy the Sens needed, because really, in my mind, Ross, they just need a stopgap guy to bridge the gap between Sogard being ready, and obviously we'll get more into Sogard, but it seemed like Talbot, if he came in on the 1 year and had a really nice year, maybe you extend him for one more year. We had an episode extend Cam Talbot, and that aged pretty quickly as we changed our minds within about 2 weeks of that episode dropping. So it didn't work out. And I think if anyone's sitting here being like, I knew at the time that was a terrible trade and Dorion messed that up, like, I don't know. I feel like most people saw what the team was trying to do and recognized that Philip Gustafsson wasn't going to work out in Ottawa. Who knows if he would work somewhere else, but it seemed clear it wasn't going to work here. At least he wasn't ready right now to do what they needed. And Cam Talbot seemed like a good answer, especially coming off that hot end of the season there. So it's tough.
It is tough, and I hope he finds another gig. I hope he bounces back. It's definitely not the way the 35, soon to be 36-year-old will want to end his career. That's been solid, man. He came up from an undrafted player to a guy who's played 432 NHL games, but not going to be in Ottawa, and I think it's best for both parties here to move on. Now, that's Cam Talbot's season in a nutshell. It finishes off just disappointing overall. It really is. This is the first time in 4 years that Cam Talbot's have had a goal saved above expected, below the 0 mark. So really unfortunate. They didn't get the Cam Talbot they wanted, nor did they get the Cam Talbot they needed. And they're going to have to look for a new alternative in between the pipes for next season.